My older brother, OB, is a bit of a bum. It's mean to say, but it's true. He can never hang on to a job for longer than a couple years max, and when he inevitably loses whatever job he had, he starts mooching off family and friends, until he can find another job months later. This entails is him freeloading at their place, eating their food, using their stuff, etc. He's lost friends because of how long he bummed off them, and I don't blame them for cutting him off. Well, this last time he lost his job, he went to our parents, but they did not have room because they were letting out our oldest brother, EB. EB's family was staying with him after he and sister-in-law lost their jobs out of nowhere within the same month. EB's entire crew was laid off with zero warning, and sister-in-law's work burned down. They simply could not afford the home they were renting anymore, so OB was pretty much crapped out of luck. So our parents, aunt, and uncle all started calling me, asking if I'd take him in, just long enough so he can get on his feet again. I stupidly let myself feel bad for him and said, okay. But he only had a few months to get another job or he was on the street. They all said, of course. And so he came to stay with me. It was a nightmare. He's a slob. He never washes dishes, never washes his clothes, and eats pretty much whatever he wants. I guess since I'm his little sister, he figured he could ignore me saying to get his crap together. Well, after 6 months, I told him he has to go, and I gave him a couple weeks to find somewhere else to stay. It seems he called our parents and cried about me kicking him out, and they told him he knew he couldn't stay forever, but they also, of course, called my aunt and uncles and told them all about it. And my busybody aunt called me and scolded me for, quote, being cruel to my brother and abandoning family when they need help the most. I let her talk and finally said she was right. Helping family was important, and I'm glad she showed me that. She seemed glad I, quote, understood the right thing to do before hanging up. So I followed her advice and packed my bro up and drove him up to her house. I couldn't take care of him anymore. He was running my bills up, but my aunt made a good point. Family should help each other. So I dropped him off there. She has room since all her kids moved out, and then I left him. But I wasn't even halfway home before I was getting multiple calls from my parents and aunt. Parents were demanding to know why our aunt was blowing up their phones, and aunt was leaving voicemails, shouting at me to come back and get my brother now. I explained to my parents, and they said it was a good idea, since aunt sounded like she wanted to help. But my aunt called me an a-hole and said she did not want my brother there. And when I told her family helps each other, she called me a beep. Last I checked, he's still living with her. Am I the a-hole? Hey guys, Mr. Reddito here. So there was a little edit added to the end of this that answered a lot of questions people were asking in the comment section. It goes as followed. Lots of people have been asking similar questions, so I thought answering them here once would be helpful. Number 1. My brother doesn't work menial jobs. He's not just hopping from one minimum wage to the other. He's working very good paying jobs like electronic repair, automotive maintenance, etc. He's very skilled, but he's so lazy. Number 2. No, my aunt hasn't spoken to me since she called me a beep, then hung up on me. Number 3. My brother has only been with her about 3.5 weeks. He stayed with me for 7 months. And number 4. My brother was upset I was kicking him out initially, but in a better mood when he realized I had another place lined up for him to stay. Not sure how they're doing together since I haven't talked to either since I dropped them off. And number 5. No, my aunt is not married anymore. Her and my uncle got divorced and he lives with his new wife. But I heard from Dad that he thought this was all hilarious. The company I work for is going through a merger with two others. Some people have taken retirement, but other than that, no one has been let go. Locations and departments are changing, and people are moving around and being promoted. I'm about to have a new boss. We have a history. I used to work with my new boss's husband. We had a one-night fling, and somehow she found out. She divorced him, and it was not amicable. I have a child with her ex-husband. The two of us share custody, but we're not together and have never been beyond that one time. I was dragged into the divorce proceedings, and she went out of her way to humiliate me. She's still angry about it, and she took her ex-husband to the cleaners. I asked HR if there was any other job I could take, but they said there's not. They also say my concerns are not valid because my new boss is a professional. I can't afford to be without a job, but I also can't have her as a boss. HR has said their decision's final. They won't give me another job or let me go if I quit. I also can't get unemployment. What should I do? Do you have any advice as to how I can convince HR to change their mind? A little bit of relevant comment from OP. It's been a few years since everything happened. When I was subpoenaed to testify in the divorce, she sent someone to serve me at the hospital just after I've given birth in front of my family, friends, colleagues, and the staff, while paying the guy extra to loudly and publicly announce I was being served because I knowingly had a baby with a married man. At that point, I had not told anyone yet that he was the father, or that he was married. I had to answer questions about the fling in court, and once it's settled, she posted my answers on social media. I'm not in a long-term relationship with her ex-husband and never have been, but we share custody no problem. We've always been amicable. He went bankrupt as a result of the divorce. She went to court to make sure he did not get out of the settlement. She successfully fought to have his wages garnished instead of accepting the payment plan he offered. Even though the payment plan would have gotten her more money in the long run. It's been rough for him, and she hasn't let up on either one of us. They shared a car and she got it in the divorce. He asked her to wait 2 weeks because he needed the car for his job. And in response, she got a court order to have it repossessed from the parking lot at his work. She was offered an equivalent job in another department. She took this job when she found out she would be managing me. HR says she'll be professional, but given how things have gone in the past, I cannot work with her. She accepted the role knowing I would be reporting to her, and chose the position over a job in a different department. Given how things are going in the past, I have no doubt she wants to make things hell on me. She's still angry at me and her ex-husband. I'm not going to make excuses for what I did. I knew he was married, and she was able to prove that I knew in court during the divorce. She definitely is not going to quit. She accepted the promotion knowing I would be one of her reports. Unfortunately, everything she did was within the law. The service was legal and my testimony was in open court. There's no law against repeating it, and it doesn't meet the legal test for harassment. We tried. The father of my child is much worse off than me right now, though. I would help him if I could, but I am in no position to. And since we share custody and visitation equally, there's no child support paid by either one of us to the other. Hey guys, Mr. Reddito here. So this story's not over yet. There's a complete update for it, but pause the video and drop a comment down below. How do you think this work scenario is going to play out? Is OP going to find a new job? Is OP going to get fired? What will happen? Drop it down below and let's get right into this update. Well, I ended up quitting rather than working for her. I appreciate your response and all the kind responses in the comments, but there was no way I could work for her when the company had clearly sided on her side, right off the bat, and when she still had it out for me all this time. Before she started her management position, she was here for a meeting. She saw me by the elevators and said the universe must be on her side, since she was offered a chance to manage one of the people who shattered her life. There was no witnesses of this conversation, and I knew then I had to get out before she took over. I wish I could say I found another job and everything's great, but it's unfortunately not the case. I had to move in with my mom and dad. I'm working as a temp agent until I can find a permanent full-time job. I did have an interview, but the hiring manager said, "Saw red flags," when I was unable to provide a current reference from either job. And only one single reference for 12 years of work in the form of my now former retired manager. They ultimately decided to go with another candidate. Another company I applied at, quote, decided not to move forward with my candidacy after they called both of the companies I worked in the past, even though I didn't have any references from either one. I don't know what they were told, but I imagine it cannot be good, as I have no friends at either place and did not leave on good terms. The father of my child is also working temporary jobs. He's had a tough time finding work since his divorce. He's also living with his mom and dad. Neither of us have a car, I can't afford it, and his ex-wife got his in the divorce. So we rely on public transportation and our parents. Things have always been amicable between us. We've always shared custody with no child support because of the equal time. But for now, our child stays with whichever one of our parents or relatives are available for childcare. And we try to help each other financially as much as possible, so our child's not affected. He's still dealing with the fallout from his bankruptcy and his ex-wife having his wages garnished instead of accepting a payment plan. Both of us are focused on getting back on our feet and giving our child a stable life. I'm so thankful we've been a family who helps whenever they can. Even though things aren't great at the moment, I still want to thank you for all your responses and your perspective you provided, and all the people in the comments who were kind and supportive. I go back and reread them whenever I'm having a bad day. Okay guys, Mr. Reddito here. There's still relevant comment from OP that was found and one small final update. So, let me know if you thought that was going to happen. I honestly thought she was going to stay at the job and maybe fight the boss's position, but nope, she said, "I'm not dealing with this," and she got out of there. Let's see what's up in the final update. Because of the fallout from what happened, I did not leave on good terms. His wife outed us and clients thought we were getting together on paid time. We couldn't prove we were not, and clients left. People lost work and the management locked things down and enforced stricter rules. That was my first job. His wife poisoned things for me at my second job. There was more fallout also, but I don't want to get into it here because it won't change anything. He wasn't my manager, he was my coworker, and we were both 26 when it happened. Final update. I have a regular, non-seasonal, full-time job now, and so has the father of my child. It's a retail job which only pays minimum wage right now, but it is better than nothing. My main hope is to get some good references from this since I only have one at the moment. Having left both previous jobs I've had because of what happened and all the rumors and things I mentioned, I've gotten over the fact I will never work in that field again and I'm over it. I'm extremely thankful both the father of my child and myself have a good support system. Parents who took us back in and help with our child, along with siblings and other extended family. Our child has a stable life because of them. His ex, who has been my boss, won a big award for a project she led earlier this year, and has been promoted as far as I've heard. I haven't had any contact from her since I left that job. She hasn't crossed my path at all. My husband and I are in a disagreement, in desperate need for a different opinion. Good afternoon. For context, I am 34, my husband's 37. He has a brother, Brad, who's 25. Brad dated Kelsey, 24, for 10 years. They began dating when they were freshmen in high school. Their first date was actually my wedding. They were engaged for 2 years before Kelsey found out that Brad had cheated on her multiple times the year before, and was still in contact and sending lewd texts to the woman he cheated on her with. This all came out about 4 weeks ago. The entire family was devastated and furious with Brad, who told Kelsey she could have the apartment, and moved in with a friend over an hour and a half away. I think he just wanted to be far away from everything. It was weird because Kelsey was a part of the family for so long. It was hard to just turn that off. And obviously we didn't. She's going through a really traumatic time and needs our support. Even so, I think it does reach a point where the family has to separate from her, since the only connecting thing was Kelsey and Brad's relationship is now gone. My husband, however, seems to think that since he's regarded Kelsey as a little sister for so long, she should be treated as such. I come home multiple times a week to her at the house. When I ask my husband about it, he says he'll text her and ask her how she's feeling, and if she says she's feeling down, he'll invite her over to cheer her up. A few nights ago, she was over, and while I was putting their kids to bed, my husband offered her a drink, and then began drinking downstairs at the bar in our den. I had a medical procedure the next morning. Nothing that was a big deal, but something I was supposed to be up and early for. I didn't need my husband to come with me or anything, but I mentioned that I would have liked it if he did. He ended up offering the guest room to Kelsey, who was up and out early and then slept in until an hour after I've come home. He has a TikTok and just follows her only. The only thing I thought he did that I thought was overstepped, and what prompted me to have a conversation with him, is that the family's going on a 2-week vacation to Belize. The house is owned by my in-laws, so we go there often, and Kelsey has come many times. My husband invited her to come to the trip as well, which I think is odd since she's no longer dating Brad, who isn't even coming on the vacation either. When I had the conversation with my husband about how I thought he was crossing some boundaries with Kelsey, he got so defensive and said I was being heartless for wanting to just write Kelsey off. I tried to explain to him I wasn't trying to write her off, but since she's no longer having ties to the family, why would she come? If she began dating someone tomorrow, would we let her be here with her new partner? My husband and I have two very opposing standpoints here, and I'm trying to come up with a way to compromise. Alright guys, so there is an update for this. However, I would like to know your opinion on this one. I don't know where this story's about to go. I could see it going so many ways. Drop down below what you think is about to happen with Kelsey and the family. Here's the update. I'm going to make this short, and updating this because of all the messages I got asking for one. Like I stated many times in my last post, I thought Kelsey was a lovely girl, and I did not want to completely cut her off, just establish appropriate boundaries. My mother-in-law found out my husband invited Kelsey. Normally, this wouldn't be an issue since the house is large enough to accommodate several more people. And to be fair, this would not be the first time someone invited someone on behalf of the family. But the issue was my mother-in-law had been speaking to Brad, my brother-in-law, and trying to convince him to come, and he eventually caved and said yeah, he'd come. So my mother flat out said Kelsey cannot come. Why would she even want to? It would be weird for her and Brad. So my husband came home and told me all this, and then tells me conveniently he's going to have to come to Belize a week later because of work. He'd meet me and the kids there. I'm not going to get into details because it got really personal, but it wasn't hard to find out it was a lie. He was planning on hanging out with Kelsey those days. This lie was the last straw, so I asked to see his phone. I looked through all of his messages on social and found a number of flirty texts with Kelsey. as well as some photos that weren't nudes or anything, but definitely suggestive. He said he had not realized how quickly things got out of hand, and that he never would have physically cheated. I don't believe that he hasn't already. I'm not really one for second chances, so I can't see this going much further. Although I'm not making any permanent rash decisions until I've had time to clear my head and get everything in order.